All right. So, I just wanted to give you guys a little more of a welcome and kind of a first introductory video. It shouldn't take too long. In this course, we're going to be studying history. We'll be studying the history of the United States of America, to be more exact. What really does this mean, though? Perhaps you've seen a museum, you've been to a museum or historic site, you've watched a documentary, read a historical book, even taken a class like this one meant to teach you something about the subject. What is history and why really should we study it? How would you guys describe history? Kind of think a minute. What are some adjectives that you would think of for history? So, a little backstory though. First, I was an overachiever in school. I always loved math a lot, like especially math. English and reading really came easily to me. I did well at science and history, but history wasn't ever my favorite. I couldn't stand having to memorize names and dates and things. I loved reading things, but as soon as I took whatever the test was, I forgot all of it. When I first graduated high school, I wanted to study music. I'm a vocalist. I thought that I would teach elementary or high school students, never middle school. Middle schoolers can be very mean. University life didn't really suit me well originally, and I decided to get married. We had two babies before I got up the nerve to look into taking classes again, and I went to TCC, to the Northeast campus. It was really a wonderful decision. I excelled. I chose to go for a general associate's degree, but I focused on courses in math and in teaching. I was all set to transfer to Texas Women's University after completing that first step, after getting my associates. But then we found out we were going to have another little one that September, starting school in August and having a baby in September. I really didn't think that was so conducive to like succeeding. So 10 years later, we're at 2020. We had a fourth little girl in 2013. I was a stay-at-home mom. A homeschool mom. I homeschooled all the girls, or have been homeschooling the girls, still have two. As a single income household, we stuck to a budget, but our girls' education was always a huge priority. And what better way to learn than through experiences? When our youngest was about almost three, we took our first really big trip out of state. And after that, we tried to do it as often as we could. It was this period that it really awakened my love for history, for those stories. You remember I said a minute ago, I love to read and write. I've always been a reader. When a teacher would ask us to read aloud, I was always the first one, sometimes kind of the only one to volunteer. I chose wonderful books to teach my girls about the world. And after we started driving and packing PB&J sandwiches, granola bars, camping in tents under the stars, and visiting as many free and very low-cost places as we could, I realized there's really a whole new world. There were whole new worlds out there. The stories we learned about the people of this country while traveling around it meant so much more than any memorized names and dates. So, for the purpose of this class, history is going to be a story that we tell ourselves about ourselves using the materials that have been left behind by past generations. History is not just a list of any kind of facts and names and dates, those things that you really just don't like to learn about and memorize. History exists in arranging this information, those names, dates, and facts, into a coherent story. The historian's job is not to make a list, but is to tell that story. Historians create stories about the past using the materials that have been left behind by previous generations. You might have come across like old newspapers, a diary, a letter that was yellowed with age. Then you've come into contact with the building blocks of history. Historians call these materials primary sources. I'm going to show you here. So a primary source is any item that was directly created by someone in the past. Historians most often rely upon written sources. Some examples of written sources, I've got a few here. Here is a ticket to the 1944 convention for it is right for you. The Republican National Convention in Chicago, 1944. So if you'll recall, 1944 is when FDR ran for his fourth term. FDR wins, so this guy is forgotten. He's the Republican nominee of the time. Some other written primary sources you might look at. Here's a movie stub from 1940. Sorry if my camera will pick it up well. Can't really see it very well there, sorry. Another, here's from a 1936 campaign, it says, it says Hope Encouragement, 18th Annual Campaign, November 16th to 24th. The fund shines through. One unique one you guys might not have seen similar things about. This is a telegram, an actual telegram. This is from Shiner, Texas. It was typed out on the 15th of October, 1931. Someone sent Western Union telegram. Beginning of the 30s. So these written sources can be really good, or they are the primary sources that historians generally rely on. Well, some other examples. So it doesn't have to be something written. It doesn't have to come in written form. The architecture of, say, the White House is a sample of a primary source. A sampler stitched by some New England girl in 1815. Pottery from an archaeological site would be primary sources. Others might include, say, these images here. Here's a young man going off to war for World War II with a couple of women there with him. One possibly his mom, one maybe his girl. He's got his dog there too. And the reason I say probably his girl, look, she sent with him saying, "Love, Susie." A lot of men would have carried similar images of their girl, their back home, to kind of remember them. Other kind of primary sources that aren't written. This is a little baggie of, you can't really see them well in this. I love having in-class classes so I can show you, but these are tokens for like food stamps. They're not really food stamps, I guess, but it would have been ration tokens during World War II. And then I've got, these are written, but I've got a lot of postcards and some first edition stamps. Other not written sources. You guys might have seen some of these before. They're fun. Anybody guess? It's the save button, right? I'm old enough to remember these, to have used these. One of these says my husband's name back from when he was in high school. Look, HEBISD computer, Richard Proctor. This is his floppy disk from his computer science class that he had to take in school. Some other fun things you guys might not have ever seen. These kind of things. But one of the buttons on your class is actually a POG. These are some POGs. These were mine when I was a kid. POGs and slammers. This slammer was yin yang on one side. And then I've got these glasses. These are from the 20s. Some bifocals. Here's the case. It's kind of falling apart. You see it's from the Griffith Drug Company in Austin, Texas. Another that you don't really think of as telling a story. I don't know exactly when this is from. Any guesses for this one? You would put a piece of string or yarn through here, and it's a shuttle for weaving. This pulls it through. You'd have the yarn separated with the weft and the weave, and you would use this to go on through. Another kind of cool one I love is this from 1915 World's Fair in San Francisco. And you can see the image. This is the Golden Gate area, but it is before the Golden Gate Bridge. This is only 1915. This one is special to me. The initials on it are MC. This was given by she would have been my great-grandmother's aunt. She was Margaret Cox. She gave it to Madeline Snell when she married Kenneth Close, my grandmother, when she got married. So my great aunt gave it to her great niece, Madeline, when she became Madeline Close. My grandmother then gave it to her daughter, Mary Close, when she was young and about to get married. And then my aunt gave it to me when I was about to get married. My name was Madeline Close when I was born as well. And so the MC were my initials. Now this is also pretty special to me. Here is a picture of my mom holding me as a baby. My mom was a nurse. She passed her nursing boards when I was about 3 days old. This is a piece of history. This is something we would call a primary source. People don't know about it without some of those stories. So the things that we look at as historians, we look at these written records to help tell some of that story, but we also take objects and we can look at these objects and hear what people have said about them. Oh, I didn't show you the other side of this. This is that locket. There's nothing in it right now, but that's the other side of it. The things we would look at would be these sources in different ways, but go along with the story that you might have heard about them. I'll have some other objects to show you at the end of this little bit. I wanted to talk about also how the stories that historians create using these primary sources are what we would call secondary sources. A secondary source is going to be any kind of book, an article, a documentary that's created after those events of the past occurred by people who did not experience them. Secondary sources will never be able to completely recreate that past. That moment has passed. The people who've experienced it have died. The best historians can really hope to do is capture a portion of that past, of that story. In creating these stories about the past, it's really important to remember two things. Primary sources do not always agree with one another. Two people attending that same event will rarely experience it the same way. Just as now, you might see something and you're attending with someone else you care about, or even someone you really don't care about, and you're attending the same thing. You see that in different ways. Because historians are interested in different things, they'll also be telling stories differently. So, primary sources aren't always going to agree because two people see things differently. Well, historians see things differently too. So looking at those stories, looking at the things that have been written down or things that have been remembered, in a way, they will be seeing or hearing different things within those stories. Okay, so since history is about creating stories, it's also about interpretation. Historians pick and choose the evidence that they believe is most convincing to help create those stories that reflect their personal interpretations about the past. So although there can be many ways of telling that same story, historians distinguish themselves from authors of fiction by basing those stories they tell on evidence from primary sources. While historians may disagree with one another over how to interpret the past, the one thing that all interpretations have in common is that they invariably tell us something about the time in which they were written. Let's return to that definition of history I gave a few minutes ago. History is a story we tell ourselves about ourselves. In informing us about the past, history also tells us something about the present. Historians live in the present. The questions they ask are influenced by current ideas, current events. For example, some recent historical works have really looked at issues of terrorism or global climate change in the past. Perhaps More importantly, historical works embrace the multicultural diversity of modern society, whereas previously American history texts focus on the achievements of a handful of white men. They have come to really include stories of women, of men, and of children of all cultural and religious backgrounds. This more inclusive story of America is a direct product of the nation's growing acceptance of diversity following that civil rights movement in the 1960s. As the nation changed to become more accepting of all people, historians modified these questions they asked and the stories that they told. So we've answered the first question that I asked: what is history? By noting that history is a story crafted out of primary sources shaped by interpretation. We've also seen that history invariably reflects current attitudes like opinions, ideas. In this sense, history tells us a story about both the past and of the present. We know that we will be telling a story in this class. From the time of enrollment, you've known that you're going to be listening to, of hearing and studying a story of the United States. But what about that second question? So what is American history? In the most basic terms, the United States is a geographical location and a political entity. It's a democratic republic consisting of 50 states, 48 of which are contiguously located between the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans in the Western Hemisphere. Canada is on the north, Mexico's on the south. Principal language is English, but Spanish and French are also widely spoken in some areas. It's governed by representative assemblies in the national capital at Washington, D.C. State capitals and local municipalities throughout the country also run. Its population is just over 300 million. The unit of currency is the dollar. Unit of dry measure is the pound. Liquid measurements are in pints, quarts, gallons. Earliest inhabitants are Native Americans. Europeans arrived permanently in the 16th century. Slavery was legal in the U.S. until 1865, at which time nearly 4 million African Americans were freed from bondage. The flag is comprised of 13 white and red stripes and a blue field of 50 stars now. Major holidays include Martin Luther King Jr. Day, President's Day, Memorial Day, Flag Day, Juneteenth, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving. Personal liberties include the right to trial by jury and freedoms of expression. These are guaranteed by written constitutions. So certainly there are many facts in that above description. But what does this really tell us about the story we are going to be telling in this class? I've already said, history is more than facts, more than names, more than dates. It's more than these holidays. It's more than flags. It's more than pilgrims and cowboys. It's more than McDonald's and Coca-Cola. The story we're going to tell takes in key themes from two treasured American rights: diversity and liberty. First, the theme of diversity. The story we're going to tell has many actors and actresses who came from different backgrounds. They spoke different languages, worshipped in different ways. Just as diversity and multiculturalism play a fundamental role in our lives today, they played a central role in the lives of those who came before us. Thus, in telling American story, we're going to stress the diversity of her populations. We're going to look at Native Americans, African Americans, and people from all over Europe and Asia. We're going to look at the experience of men, of women, and of children. A second theme we're going to use to shape that story we tell is liberty. Early Americans came to the New World seeking religious, political, and economic freedoms. They justified a war for independence from Britain by claiming that their liberties had been threatened. Yet all the while, these same liberty-loving folk deprived millions of African Americans and Native Americans of freedom. In this class, we're going to be telling a story of diversity and freedom. In studying the origins of American multiculturalism, we're going to examine the ways in which Americans struggled to extend or deprive liberty to their fellow citizens. While there are clearly many answers to the question, what is American history? In stretching our story around diversity and freedom, we're going to be addressing two central themes that resonate with both past and present conceptions of American national identity. I'm going to use that to segue just a little bit to the only type of politics we're going to talk about in this class, and that's going to be with past politics. So I've got a lot of badges. Another way to look at history with some different kind of primary sources. My earliest one, excuse me, let's see if I can find it again. There it is, from 1924, the 1924 campaign. Probably wouldn't have been able to tell me Davis and Bryan. We haven't had a President Davis. He lost. This was only $3 at a antique store because he lost. So this guy ran against Coolidge, Calvin Coolidge, and his running mate was Bryan. 1924. Here is from the 40s. This pin here, this pin says yours and mine, talking about the U.S. flag. This one here, I had one a minute ago. There it is. 1940. This is Stevenson and Cover. Sorry, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Please excuse me. Kefauver. They ran in 1940. They would have been running against FDR, his third term. Going on, we've got Truman and Barkley. This is 1948. And then against Truman, so telling that other side of the story, Truman was screwy to build a porch for Dewey. Saying, vote for Dewey over Truman. Well, Truman won. Then we've got some others. Here's a 1960. Talking about Pat Nixon, Pat for First Lady. I'm going to mix these up. So I've got here is Johnson, a couple for John. Oh, this one goes up. Sorry with the video. Oh, I skipped Ike. Eisenhower. We've got Ike there for you. And let's back Ike. This is a different for Red Cross. President Nixon, now more than ever. Hang in there, America. Reagan is coming. Showed you these. This one for the, not a political campaign necessarily, but America salutes the first men on the moon. And here's Students for Kennedy. And then the little Kennedy tab here, not a pin. And then my most recent ones are Bush and Quayle. Something older you might have fun seeing. This is from about 1903 to 1906. And that you probably guess what it is. It's a camera. And this fun thing, so you would put a card, having this one, you put a card with these two images here into this. And you look through it, and you can see the two. I guess my camera doesn't do a good job of this, but I'm supposed to see just the one. But I don't really forget this one. Anyway, and you see the one combined. One of my favorites of these cards is this. You see all the way around it, there's a bunch of writing. Someone was practicing their penmanship on this. This tells a different kind of story, just kind of the lived experience of people, the way that people really use items. It's not all about how they were supposed to be used, but how they really were used. Some child, some young person writing all over this. And then this bottle of chewable multiple vitamins by Minuteman. Well, thank you very much for listening. I hope to see you guys in the future. Thank you for today.